Hello, ghouls and ghoulies. Welcome to Scary and Bizarre Short Stories. I'm your host, Larry Lee Roten. This is a horrid tale. There are a lot of things that can't be explained in our world. This story is certainly one of them. It's called The Witch's House. I realize the story I'm telling you sounds unreal, but every time I repeat it, it awakens something in me that still, to this day, leaves me shocked. I know wicked and terrifying things exist, and if your subconscious warns you of something evil, you had better listen to it. My story began when I was 17. I had an aunt on my father's side, and as a boy, I'd often wondered why he didn't visit her. I remember my father telling me repeatedly that my aunt was a dark witch. He said I should never go to her house. I remember him saying, "Stay as far away from her as possible, Tom." He would grab my shoulders, look me in the eyes, and say, "I mean it, son. Your aunt is evil." Did I listen? No. When I was old enough to drive, I decided to visit my aunt. I didn't think she'd remember me, as I'd only seen her a few times. My aunt lived alone in an old two-story house. She was aging, and I assumed my father held some grudge against his sister, which was why he wanted me to stay away from her. I always wondered about that and thought I would find out for myself. I knew no reason why I shouldn't visit her. I walked up to the porch at my aunt's house. She opened the door as soon as I stepped into the wooden planks. It was as if she were expecting me, waiting for me. There, staring at me, was this old woman with long and chaotic hair. Her strands were a mixture of whites, blacks, and shades of gray. Her face was wrinkled and old, like an aging road map showing her life's different routes and paths. My aunt had lost one eye long ago. How she lost it, I'm not sure. I heard more than one story, but most who knew my aunt refused to talk about her. It was as if mentioning her name was offensive and forbidden. My aunt stared at me and said, "Come in, Tom." I entered her house. It wasn't as messy as I had assumed it would be. It was relatively clean and looked somewhat comfortable. I followed my aunt into the living room, but she didn't offer me a seat. Instead, we went through the house and out the kitchen door. She led me into her backyard, into an old building sitting precariously on a foundation of rocks. By the worn path, it appeared she had visited the old structure often. I followed her, not saying a word. I guess it was understood that I should follow. We entered the old building, and sitting in the middle of the room was an iron wood burning stove. The room was hot, and the stove put forth considerable heat. The huge pot on top of the stove was simmering, and its smell was somewhat offensive to the senses. She peered into the iron kettle and stirred the contents. The building had no floor, just the earth beneath our feet. I watched my aunt stir her pot, wondering if I should say something. I decided to ask what she was cooking. She looked at me and said, "I'm making a potion." I pushed the issue. "What kind of potion?" She looked at me, her eyes piercing my soul. "Nothing you need to know about." She turned and stirred her concoction once more. I stood watching her for a while and then said, "Well, it's good to see you. I guess I'll be going." My aunt walked me around her house to my car. I smiled, unsure if I should hug her, so I patted her on the shoulder and left. I didn't see my aunt after that. She was so strange. I decided I wouldn't go back there, so I never did. Quite frankly, she scared me. I was 26 when my aunt died. To my surprise, the old woman had a will. She didn't have much to leave anyone, but she gave me what she did have, including her old house. My aunt was cremated immediately. That was her wish. I do not know who paid for the services. I never asked. The house was locked up, and after things were settled, I went to the old home. After all, it now belonged to me. I pulled into the driveway and walked toward the front door. Something caught my eye as I looked up toward the windows on the second floor. Something was staring through the glass, watching me. I dropped my head and took another glance at the window. There was nothing to see now. I assumed it was only shadows dancing on the panes. A suffocating feeling settled all around me as I stepped onto the front porch. I turned back toward my car and took several deep breaths, and the feelings finally subsided somewhat, but they didn't go away. It was scary. My chest became tight, and I stood wondering if I was having a heart attack, a mild attack of some kind. I unlocked the door and went inside the house. Immediately, a hostile and threatening feeling overwhelmed me. I was afraid, but of what? I didn't know. It was a most horrifying sensation. I walked throughout the house and decided to go upstairs. As I walked up the stairs, the air became cooler, much colder. As I reached the top of the steps, I became nauseated. I stopped and bent slightly, thinking I was going to throw up, but I didn't. I didn't know what was happening to me. The house seemed to hate my presence, and I could feel something dark and wicked watching me. Whatever it was, it surrounded me. I pushed on a little farther, wanting to look at the upper rooms, thinking I would sell the old place. There was no way I'd ever live in that house. I entered my aunt's bedroom. There were items there that frightened me just by looking at them. I was shocked at what I saw. My aunt had collected many things that I won't mention. However, some were packed in bottles filled with liquid. Other items were sitting on the shelves and tables. Different types of dried grasses, or what seemed to be grasses. They had been bound together and hung on the wall. I didn't touch these things as they were frightening. I decided I should leave. I noticed some jewelry lying on a tray as I passed her dresser. I picked up a heavy gold brooch. I could sell it if it was actually gold, and it appeared to be. I picked up several other pieces of jewelry that seemed to be gold too, and put them in my pocket. I didn't want any valuable items left in the open. Anyone breaking into the old place could easily take them. I started down the stairs, and once more the air became cold. Not cool, but freezing. I was halfway down the steps, and as I looked into the living room, a large lamp came flying through the air, crashing into the railing, just inches above my hand. How does something as big as a lamp fly through the air on its own? Something had to have thrown it, right? The air was still cold. The floor air vents had planks nailed over the openings. The one below the stairs flew straight up, striking the ceiling. I ducked and stood back from the railing. It didn't come close to hitting me, but it startled me. What was happening? After striking the ceiling, the plank fell to the floor. 4 long nails were sticking upward. How can this be? I asked. As I rounded the newel post at the bottom of the stairs, I walked over to get a better look at the plank. Something struck me from behind, and I felt a deep, penetrating pain run down my spine. I turned, but no one was there. The living room had become cold, and I didn't know what to do, so I headed toward the door. I was leaving. Something grabbed me from behind, like hands latching onto my sides. I struggled and freed myself from my attacker, and as I did, I turned. No one was there. I was alone in the living room. I heard my aunt's voice. Her voice was scratchy but not muted. It was very distinct. "Those are mine," she said. I knew what she was talking about. So I ran up the stairs. Yes, I ran up the stairs and put the jewelry back on the tray. Then I headed back down the steps toward the front door. As I neared the bottom of the stairs, I heard my aunt's voice as loud and clear as I had ever heard it. She said, "Get out of my house." I left, and as I headed toward my car, I turned toward the house. In the upstairs window, I saw my aunt staring down at me. I looked away and shook my head, trying to clear the image. As I looked back, she was still there, watching me. I went to the car and grabbed my camera. I would take several pictures of the old place and try to sell it. I snapped several photos of the old house and left. When I got home, my wife examined my back. There were scratch marks from my neck down my spine to my waist. My sides had the same marks, but they ran around my sides. The scratches were red, whelped up, and stinging. Tom called me, Larry Roten, after his experience at his aunt's house. He knew I was a paranormal investigator. He told me what was happening, and he told me that it had happened that very day. I asked him if I could investigate the house and spend the night inside. Tom permitted me to do so, so I began to get my things ready. I checked my video cameras, infrared temperature detectors, and digital recorders. I was ready to go. I had a couple of friends who wanted to spend the night in the old house with me. They had never investigated a haunted site before, so we made plans to do just that. I always tried to scan the outside of a place before doing a night investigation. It was safer if you had to leave in a hurry. We all went to Tom's aunt's house. I always carried a camera in my company truck. The telephone company wanted the supervisors to photograph any damage to their facilities. I drove my CenturyLink pickup into the yard. My two friends followed me in their vans. At the time, we all worked for CenturyLink. I went around the house taking several photos. Everything seemed to be going great. I was ready to do some nighttime investigating. We were all excited. We set a time to come back. It was the following Friday. That night, when I was home, I stuck the SD card into my computer to look at the pictures I had taken. There were orbs all under the covered porch. The most astonishing thing was when I took the photos of the front of the house, I had several pictures of an old woman staring down at us in the upstairs window. Several pictures later, the image was gone. Tom never went back to his aunt's house. When I went to get the key, he had changed his mind about us spending the night. He looked at me and said, "Larry, you don't want to go in there. There's something wicked in that house." He showed me the pictures his wife had taken of his back and sides. I told him I understood, but would still like to spend the night. He refused to give me the key. Years later, after I retired, I called Tom. He told me the old house was still abandoned. As far as he knows, no one has entered the place. He said he would never go back. I asked him again if I could spend the night and do some investigating. He didn't hesitate. He said, "No." I don't know if you believe in haunted sites or witches who return to the living after dying, but I can tell you one thing. I'm glad I never went inside that house. Tom had done the right thing in keeping us out. Thank you for visiting Scary and Bizarre Short Stories. Please subscribe and give this story a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. As always, thank you for visiting my channel.